entrepreneurship was really woven into my DNA, but it took me a long time to finally make the jump.
Welcome back to the Scott Ross Show. I am so grateful that you've taken time out of your week to listen to this podcast. And today we have a really great interview with Jack Bourne. Jack is an American who now lives in Australia and has been an entrepreneur for quite a while now, since 2001. He left his corporate career and has founded a couple of different ventures. Most recently, he's been engaged in as the founder of DeadlineFunnel.com, creating a technology called Deadline Funnels, and he's going to talk about that. But you're going to get a lot of insight in this interview. He's going to talk about lessons he's learned as an entrepreneur. He's going to talk about the disciplines and the tools that he applies as an entrepreneur. He's going to talk a lot about selling psychology as well as success psychology. So I just think there's a wealth of information here. He's going to reference lots of things that we'll have in the show notes for this episode, so make sure you check those show notes out. So without further ado, let's go to the Jack.
So welcome, Jack Bourne, to the Scott Ross Show. I'm so excited to have you with us, and honored to be able to, just pick your brain as somebody who's been a super successful entrepreneur, but also someone who is coaching entrepreneurs all over the world. Welcome to the show. For the people not familiar with you, why don't you just give us a quick overview of your background and, kind of what you've been doing?
Yeah, I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but still hit all the important notes. So I'm the technical founder of a software system called Deadline Funnel. And the word technical founder means that I created the code behind version 1 of that. And it took off, got traction, and I invested in bringing on much more talented, skilled, and experienced developers and coders who run circles around me in terms of their ability to write code. But I do have the ability to, I know how to code, even though I don't do as much of it anymore. In fact, my team tries to keep me out of the kitchen as much as possible, so to speak, which is fine with me. There's other aspects of the business that I really, really enjoy, and so that's a lot of fun. So Deadline Funnel, just for context, is a conversion tool that increases someone's sales. A lot of our clients are online course creators, but we're expanding into the e-commerce space. So anyone who's selling something online, basically you're looking to maximize the number of sales that you're getting. And so Deadline Funnel does that by giving a real, legitimate, yet automated deadline. And so that was a need that I had because I didn't want to put any sort of deadline in my marketing that was fake or phony, but I also wanted it automated. So that's like the short backstory of how that came to be. And I really built it for myself, and then found out later that lots of other people had the same pain and frustration that I did. And so over the years, it's improved and grown just like anything. So, I really look at it as, yes, I have a software company, but I really look at it as I've got a user base of creators, and my job is to help them get their business from where they are now to where they want to be. And software is just one delivery mechanism for making that happen. So I've left out several chapters of like where I came from and how I got here, but that's kind of that's the short version of who Jack Bourne is.
Got it. So I want to talk about a lot of things, Jack. I want to talk about your journey, and then also a lot of the insights that you have for entrepreneurs who are, trying to do something on their own. So let's just go back a little bit. I mean, I know that you were in corporate America. I think you started maybe your corporate career with Merrill Lynch, if I'm not mistaken, and you've done some other things in corporate America, and you made this big transition to entrepreneurship. So talk about, what was that? Like, what was the transition point? Was there a tipping point? What was it that caused you to kind of, leave the nurturing biosphere of corporate America?
Well, to answer that question, I would have to say that luckily for me, my last year was not a nurturing environment, which is why I felt like I needed to break free of the prison, so to speak. The warden was looking the other way, and I decided to make a run for it. So my last year in corporate America has really stuck with me. I'm sure other people have much worse jobs, but as someone who I feel like entrepreneurship was really woven into my DNA, but it took me a long time to finally make the jump. The last year was a case of, being in a bad relationship. It was just not a match made in hell type of thing. And, I made a mental list of the 12 things that I really despised that they would do, the things that they would say, but then like the corporate doublespeak, the ivory tower BS, the yes man type of mentality. And I told myself, when I start my own company and I get some traction, these are the things where I'm just going to do the opposite, sort of the George Costanza method of management of like, I've seen what doesn't work, so I'm going to do the exact opposite. And, I would say so far it's worked really, really well. I have team members that I'm proud to say have been with me for 6 or more years. And, that type of, I have to believe that there's something to it there. So, it just really was the type of environment where I felt like, my gifts and talents were frowned upon, like I was put inside of a box, and I just didn't enjoy it. And I had kind of a dramatic breakup with my boss, where we both realized at the same time, like, it's time for me to pack my things and go. So yeah, we had a very quick breakup, and I remember calling my wife on the phone and saying, I think I just quit my job. So, she was very supportive, and it helped not having kids at the time. So we were a little bit more nimble in terms of having fewer cash demands. But she was extremely supportive. She had left her job just a few months earlier, and so we both had leapt into the entrepreneurial space, really not knowing how we were going to make it work, but just believing in ourselves that we would figure it out somehow.
Yeah, I think I've heard you describe it as you jumped off the building and built the plane on the way down, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can't take credit for that picture, that metaphor, but yes, it's like jumping out of the top, 25th floor building, and having to build the airplane before you smack the concrete.
Right. Now, a lot of my listeners, they feel, and by the way, let me just say, I was a little tongue in cheek when I said nurturing biosphere. I think a lot of people feel very constricted and out of place in corporate America, and just feel like maybe, they have a calling that they're just not going to fulfill there. And that's not to put anyone down that's in corporate America, by the way. We have plenty of people listening that are, in that corporate sphere. But for the people who do feel like they should be doing something else, fear is gripping. The fear of the unknown is like the devil, right? They know it's behind door number 1. And how do you, what advice or counsel do you give people in that environment to, help them make the leap that you made?
So one of the most important things is to surround yourself with people that are supportive, but also can give you constructive criticism. So I remember in the weeks leading up to this breakup with my boss, I got on the call with someone who had been a friend of mine for years, and we kind of kept in touch. His name was Mike. And I told him my idea, like, hey, I'm thinking about starting this web design business. So I'm going back many decades now. And Mike's instant response was, oh my gosh, web design business. Like, he gave me a list of 6 reasons why it was the worst idea in the world. Like, he really rained on my parade. I'm trying to keep this PG, but there's other terms that I could use. So he rained on my parade. And after he got done raining on my parade, there was this awkward pregnant pause. And then he said, I guess that sounded pretty negative, didn't it? And I said, yeah, Mike, it did. And that was the last time I ever talked to Mike. Like, it was just kind of ended that relationship. In contrast, I had another friend named Scott, and Scott hired me. He was my first client, and hired me to do his corporate website. And it was a very ugly website, but it was the type of thing where he was providing the support that he could. Like, he believed in me, not necessarily because for any reason other than he just believed in me. So having friends like Scott, and an incredible wife, and people to support you and believe in you. Sometimes it's important to surround yourself with people that believe in you, even if the one specific idea that you have is not the idea that they believe in. So sometimes you need someone who can say, look, you're bigger than this idea. Like, I believe in you. but this specific idea, there's a way that you can use your traits, your skills, your abilities in another way. I think it's also important to understand that as entrepreneurs, especially when you're first starting out, you have to be comfortable with the idea that you're going to end up in a different place than you think that you are. And really a big part of I believe, when I look back to, and my journey's not over, but for the journey so far has really been like half the value has been in the journey itself, how I've grown and how I've improved, but I'm not doing web design anymore. I could have kept growing that, and I'm sure that could have worked out great, but where you start, it's not necessarily where you end up. You're sort of exploring this dark mansion without, with a flashlight that's kind of weak on batteries, and you're exploring one corner of the room at a time, not knowing how many rooms there are or how many levels there are. And so you're trying to find your way through this house, and you just have to have faith in your ability as you go and explore.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, you don't want to be a millionaire to be a millionaire. You want to become a millionaire because you would become the kind of person that created so much value, people volunteered to give you $1 million. That growth process and like the journey being the destination, like you were just saying. So, I want to talk about deadline, and deadline's a big part of what you do. You have a product that's built around it, but it just occurred to me as you were telling your story that really you created a deadline in what you did, right? You quit your job. My guess is you didn't have infinite amounts of money. So there's instantly a deadline
Right.
to go create a next stream of income. I mean, just talk about that idea, the power of having a deadline and how that can motivate us. And then also, when it comes to sales psychology, how we can utilize the power of deadline in driving revenue.
Yeah. So I would say a few things. So, I gave a talk at an event called SAM, and it was in Nevada, and this was probably over a decade ago now. But I remember the talk was really about how to really shorten your runway. So the idea is, it's really important. There's a concept called Parkinson's law. So basically, our work expands to fill whatever sort of room that we give ourselves. So if we give ourselves 6 months to be able to get something off the ground, it's going to take us 6 months. If we give ourselves 6 days, that's how long it's going to take. And so by really constricting the deadline, the time frame, even artificially, it really helps you get focused in on what are the key things, because all these extraneous things like, okay, well, first thing I need business cards. Well, look, in some businesses, maybe that is absolutely what you need, but there's a lot of businesses where no, you don't really actually need a business card to get a client. For example, if I were just starting out to do copywriting, so I'm going to write email copy, do I really actually need business cards and have them designed and go through the process of getting the perfect logo and getting everything all typed up? Do I need to go through all of that in order for me to feel like, okay, now I'm worthy enough to go and try to pitch Scott Ross on redoing his email copy? No, it's really just getting on the phone with you and saying, look, let's talk about your email copy, and I want to talk about how I'm going to deliver additional value. So when you compress the time frame that you have, it really forces you to focus in on the things that are really going to move the needle for you. Another thing that just from my story that really informed my understanding of how important the deadline was that I've made every mistake in the book, and one of the mistakes that I made was that I chose a project that really is sort of a two-sided marketplace. So that was my first thing. So basically, it was an eBay for healthcare providers, where the agency and the nurses would meet together. And so I had to build up both sides of this. And so I was doing it for free. And after about a year of doing this and also doing odd jobs on the side to be able to keep money coming in, eventually my very loving wife came and said, babe, I love you, I believe in you, but it's time to find out if this project actually has been an interesting hobby or if we can actually make money out of it. And I said, you know what, you're right, it's time. So before there was a concept of a product launch, before this was really even a thing, I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge X amount of dollars. I'm going to send out some emails and then give people a deadline. And if people don't sign up, I'm pulling the plug. Like, I'm just going to turn it off. And so I sent out the emails and maybe 1 or 2 sales came in, but I'm thinking, oh my God, I totally wasted an entire year of my life. And then I started to turn off people's access as the deadline hit. And within the next 48 hours, about $26,000 of money flooded into my bank account in the form of orders, because what I didn't realize was that my clients were actually the worker bees in the agencies, and they didn't have the credit card. And so they ran out, got the corporate credit card, and told their bosses, look, we really need this service. But it wasn't until the actual deadline was imposed that they actually realized, holy cow, like I can't put off this decision any longer. I need access to this. So that was my first experience in the online realm of the power of a deadline to really force people to make a choice. You're either in or you're out. And so that was a very informative thing for me.
Well, so I love it. Let's just talk about two of those things you just said. I mean, number one, the whole Parkinson's law thing. I mean, so would you advise people to kind of in their mind at least create these artificial deadlines for the projects that they're working on or the endeavors that they're pursuing as a way to, get much more done in a limited amount of time?
Yeah, well, okay. So I use this all the time when I'm preparing for a webinar presentation, let's say. So this may not, let me just take a quick tangent. So when I'm trying to get a presentation done, what I used to do was I used to try to like make slide 1 as beautiful as possible, then slide 2 as beautiful as possible, and on and on and on. Well, that's a really slow way to do it. So one of the things that I've become, I'm a perfectionist by nature, but that's really just kind of a way for fear to manifest and bubble up. And so the way that I put things together now is that I give myself permission to do like the B+ level job, but it's 100% complete. So that if we're going to do a presentation on Friday and you called up on Wednesday and said, hey, guess what? We've got to do it on Wednesday now. Like, so that last 48 hours, I'm sorry, we just need to do it now. I've got at least a B+ presentation that from beginning to end functions, like it has all the key components, okay? But it just is missing that polish. And then I go back and I give it a polish, so another edit. So this may sound really, really kindergarten level basic, but for me at least, this was a huge light bulb moment that, forcing myself into this artificial deadline of, look, you have until Friday, but force yourself to get it done this afternoon. Version 1 this afternoon, just go through, boom, 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 like create it as quickly as possible. And that doesn't mean put out shoddy work. It means get the first draft done artificially fast. And then it gives you you have this sense of relief of, okay, that's done. I have a functioning presentation, even though it's not my best work. Now let's go make it my best work. And so for some people that may seem super basic, but for me, that's a huge light bulb moment. But if you're to think back to the show, The Apprentice, one of the things that's kind of fascinating about that show and what I picked up on pretty quickly was that these challenges that they would do, they would say, okay, I can't remember a specific challenge, but it'd be something like, okay, you've got to build this business and create this advertising campaign in an afternoon. And you can see the shock like echo through the people's cranium as they're trying to make sense of like, how am I supposed to cram a week's worth of work into one afternoon? But you have to, because you're going to the boardroom and someone's getting fired, right? And so what happens is the team, comes together like, okay, we have this constraint, this time box constraint. So obviously, like normally we would do this, normally we would do that, but we don't have time for that. Like we just got to focus in on what are the key things to actually get this thing done. And boom, 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 like all of a sudden the extra stuff just gets jettisoned. So yeah, I do think that forcing yourself into these artificially short constraints is a really powerful forcing mechanism. What you need to become comfortable with is that the first, like whether it's imposed from the outside or whether you're imposing it on yourself, the first thing that happens is that your mind says, wait a second, this just isn't possible. It's not possible. So then the next question that you need to ask yourself would be, okay, but if it were possible, how would I do it? And if you ask that and you actually give yourself the space for your subconscious to answer that question, then you become very, very resourceful. And it's like, okay, well, if I gave up a little bit of my perfectionism, but I still was able to get the job done, here's what it would look like. And so it's a very, very powerful forcing mechanism that I've found. Now, I want to go back to like the way that I left corporate America. There are some schools of thought that say, look, you should burn the boats, on the shore and say, look, I'm leaving my job, I'm leaving the comfort of the nest, and I'm gonna it's do or die. Like, I need that pressure in order to make it happen. There are other people who say, you should keep your job and work on it on the side, because you certainly don't want to burn your bridges, so to speak. So I think that it really depends on your situation. My situation was that I was in my 20s, I didn't have any kids, and I had a supportive wife, and I knew what my expenses were, and I had odd jobs that I was willing to do on the side, right? And so if you're, if you're willing to, if you're in that type of situation, I think there's really nothing wrong, especially if you are absolutely miserable in your current job. There's nothing wrong with saying, look, this is just not a good fit. And worst case scenario, I'll go get another crappy job, because the one that I have right now isn't any good. So I'll go find another one that isn't any good. If that's the worst case scenario, I'm willing to deal with that. So for me, in my situation, that was really good. Now, if you're in a job that pays, it's a 6-figure job, you've got a family, and you've got, mortgage and all sorts of, you've got some high expenses, and your job is not killing your soul day by day, then I would say, build your lifeboat on the side. You're the type of person who would feel more fulfilled by having your own thing, but it's not like you're in a low-paying, soul-crushing job. So I would say in that type of situation, it makes sense to build your lifeboat on the side, and then when you feel like it's ready, then jump in the lifeboat, because I think it would be irresponsible to tell everyone, okay, the way to do this is to just quit your job and then just run as quickly as possible. Because look, entrepreneurship, sometimes you don't know how long it's going to take for you to actually have a success. The other thing also depends on like what business you're going into. I went into something that was, it was kind of tangentially related to what I was leaving. So if you're going to jump into something that's completely different, so for example, if you are, you work in a doctor's office and you're going to create, your idea is to create an iPhone app for real estate. Hey, you might be sitting on the next $1 billion idea, but let's also be honest. You're jumping into something that is very, very different than what you do on the day-to-day. So it really depends. The less overlap there is between what you're jumping into versus what you do now, the more risk there is, because there's just a whole lot more unknowns, things that you're going to discover as you jump into the marketplace. And you need to give yourself time to be able to uncover those unknown unknowns.
Got it. That's great stuff. I really, really love it, Jack. So let's talk about deadline from a different perspective. Talk about it from a sales psychology perspective. What's the power of deadline there? And how could, the average entrepreneur kind of start thinking about how to bring the power of deadline into whatever they're doing, their unique selling proposition, whether it be online or offline or whatever?
Sure. So there's a lot that we could talk about there. So I'm going to try to focus this down on the big rocks. So one of the most important things to understand, and I talk about this, and even in my webinar presentations, is that a deadline by itself is not going to resurrect a dead offer or a product that really doesn't have have an audience. Like if it doesn't really solve a burning problem that people have, then or there's some other issue with the product itself, a deadline isn't going to fix all of your issues. A deadline is really an accelerator. So if you've got a car traveling down the road at 50 miles an hour, this is the jet fuel that takes it from 50 to 100. But if you've got a car that's sitting on blocks with no wheels and no engine on the inside, then it's not going to fix it. When you're looking at things that really move the needle for sales and conversion, whether it's online or face-to-face, it's really the offer. So people a lot of times confuse, okay, well, my offer is my product. Well, no, it's not. The offer is a whole bunch of other things that are related to your product, but are not your product. So for example, things like the way that you offer your pricing. So you might have one price that you're offering to everyone, but what if you had a trial price? What if you had a $7 trial, a free trial, or $50 trial? What if you had a payment plan? There's lots of different ways to present that. So just by offering a payment plan can completely change the number of people that take up your offer. Then there's guarantees. There's also there's bonuses, or all sorts of different components that go into the actual offer. And you can take the same product and mix and match it with different offers, different bonuses, different guarantees, and come up with wildly different offers that have different conversion rates, different sales rates, and also have different impacts on your bottom line. So why do I bring this up? Well, because a deadline is a really important part of your offer. So if I say to you, look, there's a special offer because you just joined my list, I'm giving you these 2 extra bonuses that are going to help you achieve the results you want to achieve twice as fast. And I'm giving you a little bit of a discount because I want to reward fast action takers. But this special deal, just like any special deal, doesn't last forever. So you have 48 hours to take advantage of it. If you have any questions, hit up, contact my team. We'll answer your questions, but the deadline is in 48 hours. Well, now I've given you a special deal that's better than you would normally get, and there's a deadline. So what happens is with a deadline, it does several things. So one thing it does, which is pretty obvious, is that it forces people to make a decision. So in any sort of online marketing campaign, no matter how it's constructed, there are the people who immediately see your message and they go, you know what? This is not for me, period, whatsoever. Like, I'm just gone. It's not, either it's not right for me right now, but they're tuning out. Okay. And that's fine. That's part of marketing. Then there are the people that are on the opposite side, where as soon as they see it, they say, where have you been all my life? And they just jump right in. They didn't need a whole lot of motivation. But then there's everyone else. Okay. This is everyone else that we're trying to bring across the line. And so we're trying to educate them, trying to develop know, like, and trust. These are the people that are opening your emails, clicking your links, watching your videos, attending your webinars, but they're not buying. They're putting it off. And there's lots of reasons why they do this. So first and foremost, a deadline forces all of those people who are paying attention but not taking action to actually make a decision. And when you force people to make a decision, if they're leaning in the direction of doing this, especially if you've got a really good guarantee, a lot of times they will finally make the decision to say, while they're paying attention, because they're not going to give you their attention for an infinite amount of time. While they're in your marketing funnel, while they're paying attention to your messaging, you get them to make a decision now. But it also does something else interesting, which is that it will, depending on how you communicate it, it will actually increase the perceived value of what it is. So what I mean by this can be explained best by a study that was done, I forget what university, but let's say it was Duke. I believe it was Duke University. So imagine a 101 auditorium with hundreds of students in it, and you divide the room into left and right. So on the left-hand side, you give everyone a mug that's got a beautiful Duke University emblem on it. You just say, everyone on this side of the room gets a mug. Everyone on the other side of the room, you don't get a mug. Now, here's the thing. We're going to hand out a piece of paper to everyone. The people, and the question is, for the people who have the mug, how much would you be willing to, how much would someone have to pay you in order to give up the mug? And then the other side of the room who doesn't have the mug, how much would you be willing to pay to buy the mug? What it turns out is that same mug costs, like the perceived value is twice as much for the people who have it in their hands, and you're asking them, hey, how much would someone have to pay you for you to give up the mug? Because they have it, and it's this idea of I don't want to give up this thing that I have. So how does this come into marketing? Well, especially with your online marketing, if you can start to use language in your online marketing that talks about, hey, Scott, you've got this opportunity in your hands right now. The special deal is yours. You have the opportunity to change your life and to improve your business with this program that I put together for you, with the special offer, the discount, and the extra generous guarantee. It's in your hands. But if you wait another 5 hours, you're not going to be able to have this. You can still buy the training, but it's going to cost you more. You're not going to get the guarantee. You're not going to get these bonuses. So it's in your hands. The opportunities here now. Don't let it slip away. Well, the way that I've just languaged that on the spot really paints this picture that you have something right now. And if you wait, it's going to be taken away from you. And what happens is that people psychologically don't want to let go of something that they already have. And so it's not just having a deadline, it's also how you communicate it that is really, really powerful.
Really interesting. So when did you stumble across this whole deadline concept? You said you developed your software because it was a need you have. What was it that even sparked the idea that it was something you need? And tell me about that part of your entrepreneurial journey.
So for many, many years, I've been a student of marketing and persuasion, and just trying to understand how, how people make decisions. Because if you understand how people make decisions, and it's not based on logic and rationality, then you can really get more people to take action. Now, one of the people that I was an early influence on me was Robert Cialdini, the author of the book Influence. And one of his principles that he talks about is the concept of scarcity. So, and I had seen product launches, and if we go back to a little bit earlier, I told my story about the deadline with this first project that I was creating, and how it seemed like no one was buying until the deadline actually happened. So I had seen with live promotions and Black Friday events and things of that nature, that a deadline definitely drives sales. I started to notice a pattern that on the last day, that's typically when you get the maximum number of sales. So take Black Friday, for instance. When you first announce the special deal, there's a bunch of people that rush in and buy, but then there's an even bigger sales surge on the last day when you announce the deadline, the time's ticking down. So I thought, well, this is a principle of persuasion. I was a big believer in automated marketing and email marketing, lead generation. So I was thinking, okay, well, how could we use this in a way that isn't lying to people? So in other words, you enter my email sequence on a Monday and the thing ends on a Friday, but it legitimately is over for you on a Friday. Someone else joins on a Tuesday, for them it's over on a Saturday. How can I set this up so that when my email system is telling you, hey, Scott, tonight's the last night to grab this special deal, how can we do this in a way that is fully automated so you don't have to babysit it, and it's also increasing your conversions, but it absolutely is 100% honest and accurate? And so I just assumed that surely someone had created this. And so I went looking for it. And I saw lots of little plugins for WordPress and countdown timer scripts and little bits of code that you could add to your website. But none of them went anywhere close to like the 12 different things that I wanted it to be able to do. None of it really didn't do any of them. So I decided, okay, I'd already created one software platform. And so I thought, well, I wasn't looking for something new to create, but I'll create this for myself, because even if no one else buys it, I definitely want to buy it. And then I started to make it possible for other people to sign up. I started sharing it with some colleagues and peers, and word started getting out, and that's how Deadline Funnel was born.
Amazing. Now, what are maybe some of the other biggest lessons or takeaways from your journey? You've been doing this entrepreneurship thing since like 2001. You've had a lot of success, but you've also had some failure. What are some things that you could share with our listeners that could maybe or give them a little shortcut past some of the common mistakes that you've seen entrepreneurs make?
Well, so one of the mistakes that I made for a long time, which really held me back, was really a reluctance to invest in myself in the form of either education opportunities or networking events, or really tools. Like, for the longest time, I would really try to avoid spending money on what I consider to be expensive platforms. And sometimes it's funny, because sometimes we'll get that type of thing coming into our help desk, like, oh, I can't afford, X, Y, and Z. And I'm thinking, Deadline Funnel, and I'm thinking, if you're using it and you're making sales, it's not an expense. I mean, we have people who, if you look at the testimonials on our site, some of the numbers that people are reporting are just out of this world in terms of the sales that they're generating from this. And so the small monthly or annual fee is an investment. So just bringing it back to my journey, it took me a long time to really wrap my head around, look, yes, it technically is an expense on your credit card, but it's actually an investment in your business. And it's going to save you time. It's going to make you money. And so for me particularly, that was something that held me back. Another thing that held me back was really trying to do everything myself. Now, some of that has come back to be a benefit in some regards, but I do think that early on, first of all, when I started, they didn't, I don't want to sound like the guy who talks about, like, I went went to school in the snow, uphill both ways, that type of thing, like back in my day type of stuff. But truly, back in my day, there wasn't Elance or Fiverr or freelancer.com. Like now, it's a lot easier for you to instantly get access to some incredibly talented people all over the world, whether it's editing video or creating video. I used to work for a guy named Perry Marshall, and I was talking to him just the other day, and he actually went on, it's not called Elance anymore, Upwork, and he hired, I think, half a dozen genetic scientists to study the COVID virus. So he literally spun up a genetics lab, of outsourced genetic scientists. So whatever it is that you want, it's a lot easier these days and a lot more acceptable. Everyone understands, oh, I don't have to become an expert necessarily in copywriting, or if I'm really great at copywriting, but I'm horrible at design, I'll just go find a designer. Like if you're willing to spend the money, there are so many people out there that are available to help you. So those platforms really didn't exist to the extent that they do today, but I still would have to say that it was a big leap for me to, again, invest the money in my business and pay for people who are going to help grow my business, so basically to grow my team. And I think everyone listening probably knows this a lot better than I did back then, but it's your team that's really going to make you successful. So your job as an entrepreneur is not necessarily to be doing the thing this idea. You may have to be doing these a lot more than you want to or should be doing early on because it's a cash flow issue, but you should be reinvesting whatever profits that you get into your business. And where you should really invest it first is in attracting super talented people. Even if you only get a portion of their day or a portion of their week, bring these people onto your team and start to leverage up your business, and things will slowly begin to improve. It's sort of like I love this idea of the flywheel concept, but this concept of a flywheel is really, really important. I think you need to understand your flywheel. Basically, a flywheel is if there's 5 or 6 components of what makes your business run, and improving any point on that wheel will make the wheel spin better, faster, then that's your flywheel. And so it's not 26 different things, it's like 5 or 6 key fundamental things that anything that you improve makes the whole thing better. Well, and one of the things that I think is a key flywheel internally for anyone's business is attracting talent and being able to afford that talent. Because if you bring the right people on your team at the right time and you give them the right leadership, then they're going to help bring in extra revenue. Well, that extra revenue can bring in additional talented people or pay to get more time from the people that are already on your team, or to give them bonuses to help them stay on longer so you have less turnover. So all of these, and then that drives additional sales. Like if you guys we're leaving out a lot of details, but the concept is as you start to attract talent, develop talent, retain talent, and you're working on yourself as a leader and as a manager and someone who can spot and find talent and know what your business needs at the right time, then you're bringing people onto your team who are going to help push that flywheel a little bit faster and a little bit faster. And what happens is that in the beginning, the improvements that you see are minuscule, but they're there. And then it's like exponential growth. The faster it spins, and it just starts to go faster and faster and faster. And before you know it, you look back and you think, wow, we're really growing really, really rapidly. But that growth is hard to see when it's first starting.
Yeah, that's Jim Collins who wrote that book, Turning the Flywheel. He wrote Good to Great as well. We'll link to that book in the show notes. So a couple last questions. Do you have any disciplines or tools that you use just as personal development tools or disciplines, or just, as an entrepreneur that you feel are very valuable to you?
So what I'm about to suggest, I don't do on a daily basis, but I know that it would be helpful. But it's been something that I have used for extended periods of time on a daily basis. And these are moments in my business that I can point back to and say, okay, that's where I got mentally unstuck and the business moved forward in a big way. And that is journaling. And so I've got lots and lots of some of these are back in the States, but lots and lots of journals, where I look at it as, as a coder, I look at it as debugging my own software. And so when I get my ideas out on paper, and it just starts with early in the morning, just starting to write, like not knowing where it's going to go. And some mornings, like, exactly what you want to talk about. And so you write in your journal, and you just start cranking away. Other mornings are like, what? Like, I don't have anything to say. So just start there. I don't have anything to say today, so I'm just writing on this piece of paper. And then what you're going to find is that just the practice of getting that hand moving, all of a sudden is going to unlock some things. Sometimes I would start off by saying, I don't have anything to write today, but if I was going to write, I guess I would write about ... and then some ideas come up and I write about that. So getting those ideas out of your head really helps me think through a lot of the stuff, the sort of the code that's running in the background in my head. And there are some things where, points in my life where I was really stuck. And by looking at that and analyzing, just getting the information down, and not editing, not like, this is just for me. So this is not something like I'm ever going to show the world. And so in the same way, I would highly recommend that the whole point of doing this is for you not to filter. Like, you can write down, you can be as negative as you want to be. Just write it all down, because getting it out of your head sometimes will really help you see the forest for the trees. And so that's a really, really powerful process. And I know other people have talked about that as well. So I know I'm not alone in this. I don't do it every single day, but particularly in times of my life where I felt like, okay, I feel like I'm repeating the same pattern over and over. So to bring it back to, I think you alluded to that some of your audience is feeling like they've got the man's boot on the back of their neck, and they have this creative side inside of them. They want to one day break free and to start their own thing. They want to be able to express themselves through an entrepreneurial passion. So start there. Start to write down, like what am I afraid of? Like I'm worried that if I quit my job and I start my own business, that the following is going to happen. And just be negative. Like paint out the picture. Like, don't hold back. I'm worried that I'm going to go bankrupt and the collectors are going to call. And just write it all down, and then take a break, come back and take a look at it and say, okay, is this likely? Is this really likely that this would happen? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe the answer is no. If this happened, would I be able to deal with it? Like, sometimes just facing your fears on paper is the step that you need to realize, okay, look, it's not that bad, right? Like, we live in Australia now. And so for a lot of people, like, oh my God, you moved to Australia. They freak out even more when I tell them, yeah, well, when we moved here, my wife bought one-way tickets. We're like, oh my God, one-way tickets. How did you know? The answer is we didn't know. We knew that a one-way ticket would kind of get us about 6 months over in Australia. And you know what? They sell one-way tickets going the other way too. So you could always reverse that decision. So, was it a bold move? I don't want to downplay it. Yeah, it was a bold move, but it was one that we were ready to reverse if the situation didn't work out. So sometimes when you look at what's actually holding you back, you go, look, if that's the thing that's holding me back between taking a shot at my dreams, is that really that bad? And if that happens, what would I do? How would I react to that situation? Would I be able to survive it? Would I be able to recover? If the answer is yeah, maybe it's time that you actually go for it. Do it.
I love it. I love the idea of journaling. I have a talk I do called The Power of Reflection. And, the summary is, people say experience is the best teacher. Experience is a terrible teacher. There's people with 70, 80 years of experience, they've learned nothing. So,
right.
The idea is that reflected upon experience is a great teacher. And I think journaling is a great way to reflect, like you're saying, on where you're at, what you're learning, what's happening in your heart, in your life, and where you can go from there.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Jack, one last question I ask everybody who comes on the show. If you only could recommend a single book that everyone should read, what would it be?
So, okay, I can only say one. So I would do Business Brilliant by Lewis Schiff.
Okay, we'll link to that in the show notes. Super valuable. Well, Jack, it's been really fascinating getting to know you. You're an amazing guy. And, thank you for all the value you're adding into the world and the way you're helping so many people with the products you're creating. And I'm really excited about, your life in Australia. It sounds like you're having a good time down there. How could people connect with you further and, connect with, follow you, connect with your products, etc.?
Yeah, I would say to visit. I don't have a big social social media presence. Most of my interaction with social media is through advertising I put out into the world and content. But you could. I am on Facebook, but you could. I would say anyone who wants to check out what we're doing with Deadline Funnel, I would recommend getting on my list, because a lot of times I'll send out business related or motivational stuff that doesn't necessarily have to do with deadlines at all. And we also, as I mentioned to you before we started the call, there are other courses and I look at it as my job as helping you, the entrepreneur, become the best marketer and business owner that you can be. Now, I don't have, there's certainly topics that we don't cover, but we don't just talk about deadline-based stuff. So for example, we recently taught our clients how to become better email marketers, and we had a training course dedicated to that. So I would recommend checking out Deadline Funnel. So go to deadlinefunnel.com. Join our list, consider starting a free trial. I think that you'll find that our software improves your sales very, very quickly. But even if you just want to be exposed to the emails that I'm sending out, because maybe something I said resonated with you, then go over there, join the list, and you'll be getting emails from us.
Great. Deadlinefunnel.com. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. Well, Jack, listen, thank you so much. It's been a real honor having you on the show, and I wish you the best. Stay safe during this coronavirus time.
You bet. You too.